back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, this is our last podcast. We're kind of wrapping up the World Juniors here.
Yeah, that we are. That the World Juniors are officially done for this year. Overall, a pretty good tournament. A lot of it kind of went the way we thought it was going to be. But yeah, we'll kind of dive into the games and man, it could have been a completely different tournament here. There's a couple games that went some different ways, a couple close ones, and yeah. But before we do, actually, I saw something the other day, and I just thought it was quite funny. It was on the 29th of December. It was Canada played Sweden. This was in the preliminary round as well, by the way. And Sweden beat Canada 2-0. Which featured blanking on his first name now, even though Hugo Havlid. He was in net for Sweden and got a shutout. And he was actually the first, the last time that Sweden had shut out Canada in a World Juniors game was back in the 1998 World Juniors. Do you want to take a guess at who was the goalie for Sweden that shut out Canada way back then?
That shut out Canada in 1998 for Sweden.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's...
You don't have to think too hard about it.
That's a while ago. I mean, well, I guess you're talking about the juniors, right? So it'd be a guy who's young at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Henrik Lundqvist.
No. I'll give you a hint, and then you'll get it.
Okay.
Tampa Bay Lightning legend.
No. Johan Holmqvist?
Yeah. It was.
Absolute legend.
And I pulled it up because I wanted to make sure his numbers were nuts. Like, he played 6 games. He had a .919 save percentage and a 1.8 goals against in that tournament.
Unreal.
Like, just insane by him. And they I don't even have it pulled up here. I don't know what they ended up winning in that tournament. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, man, that's crazy that it's been that long since it happened, and for it to be a guy like that, I thought was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's pretty cool.
But with that out of the way, we can jump into the knockout round. Last episode covering the World Juniors, we kind of dove into the preliminary round and looked at all that, and now the important games. Man, the first day was actually very exciting of it. The only one not being the US Latvia game. Don't need to dive into that. US stomped them 7-2. I'm surprised Latvia even got 2, to be honest with you. But other than that, the other 3 games, like 2 overtime games. The third one probably should have been an overtime game. Game-winning goal was scored with 11 seconds left. So, I mean, which of the 3 do you want to start with here?
Oh, I don't even know. I guess we'll start with the one that didn't go to overtime.
All right, you know what? Yeah, might as well get it out of the way. Czechia upsetting Canada. Well, kind of upsetting. A lot of people actually thought Czechia was going to win this game. So Czechia defeated Canada 3-2. Stancil getting the game-winning goal, his second goal of the game, with 11 seconds left. Trying to, I don't know if he was trying to maybe throw a backdoor pass or just put it on net. It went off defenseman Owen Beck's skate and right into the net.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I watched the whole game, and just watching, Czechia gets off to a 2-0 lead after the first period. Canada fights and gets 2 back in the second period, and then the third period was just Canada just dominating, like just peppering Czechia, and just watching. It's just one of those games where you're watching and you're like, okay, you know what? Canada's doing they're throwing the kitchen sink, everything they can. Nothing's working. You just know Czechia is going to come down and get some sort of bullshit goal and steal this game. And then, sure enough, 11 seconds left. They do a heartbreak for Canada. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised
No,
by it, really.
I believe in our last World Juniors podcast coverage that I was saying that this is one of the ones that, like, obviously you hope and you kind of expect Canada to win this game, but Czechia is one of those up and coming teams that's been looking really good recently in the World Juniors. So I was not surprised when they pulled ahead at the last bit, but that was a real dagger for the Canada boys. That was tough.
Yeah, it was. And there's a lot that we can say about Canada. I'm not, we're not here to talk badly about these players or name drop players who are bad. I think Canada was doomed from before the tournament even started. I don't think they had the best head coach that they could have had for it. And it was very evident when going all the way through the preliminary rounds and even most of the Czechia game, their four best scorers, like their four guys that put up the most points and contributed the most offense for the team, was their fourth line and their extra forward, their 13th forward.
Yeah.
Like when not including the Latvia game, because like Canada was obviously going to dominate Latvia. Canada's top six, so their top two forward lines throughout the entire rest of the tournament had only 3 goals and 5 assists combined between them, which is awful.
Yeah,
and
especially with how high scoring these games generally are. There's a lot of 7-2s, 8-5s, 5-2s, so that's not much.
And even in the tournament now, where you're seeing, like the United States especially, they loaded up on all their best players that they possibly could. Sweden, Finland, Slovakia, Czechia, they're all bringing the best possible roster that they can for this tournament. Canada didn't. Canada tried to create an identity team, where you've got your top guys being your scorers and your, third, fourth liner, maybe not scoring as much, but they play more of a grittier game and they're crashing and bashing. And I think that just hurt them. I think they had too many good players sitting at home on the couch watching. And it also doesn't help that, you could have had Bedard there, you could have had Fantilli, you could have had Benson, but they're all good enough that they're dominating in the NHL right now. So that's, three big players that they could have had that could have been huge difference makers for the team, even just one of them.
Bedard's going to the All-Star game, or hoping to, if his job will let him.
Don't know about that now, but
like, could you imagine a guy plays in the World Juniors and then gets on a plane to Toronto and not too long later is in the NHL All-Star game?
Yeah, like it'd be crazy, but like, and at the end of the day, like, I know there's a lot of Canadians fans, like Canada as a whole, not the Montreal Canadiens, obviously, that are really kind of bashing on these players and all this. And you know what? At the end of the day, those players still went out and gave it their all. Like, I think at the end of the day, I think this team was just kind of doomed from the beginning. When they released their tryout rosters and whatnot for it, or whatever you want to call them, and there was already some very notable names playing in the WHL and the OHL and whatnot that weren't even on there to begin with as a thought. It was very clear that it was like, okay, this is the road we're going down this year. And hopefully more than anything, I mean, next year, World Juniors in Ottawa, back in Canada. Canada's going to be in the same division once again as the United States, which always adds a little more fuel into the preliminary round. So hopefully this was a bit of a learning curve for them, to get their shit together and come back better than ever next year. But that's not to take away from what Czechia did, because Czechia played a hell of a game and
Yeah.
really showed up in this tournament. And we'll continue to talk about Czechia more as we go on.
Yeah, and it's it works in maybe in like the WHL playoffs and the NHL playoffs, getting that team where you got the bit of the identity lines in your third and fourth lines that are more physical or more defensive and stuff like that. But in these best on bests, like the Olympics, the World Juniors, I think there's too much talent there, and I think you need to just ice the best guys. And I think what you were saying about that was bang on. I think they needed to, instead of going for that, just kind of pick the guys who are right for the job and go watch and
Yeah.
go, because they have some incredible talent. And I don't know if they brought all of it necessarily, not like any of the guys that went didn't deserve to, but I think there were some omissions that could have gone with and produced a little better.
Yeah, exactly. And I hate the stigma of in the World Juniors of, you got to roll with the 19-year-olds as your top guys. Like Macklin Celebrini was by far Canada's best player throughout the tournament. And he
Yeah.
was never really given the opportunity to play on the top line, with their top wingers or anything. He was always kind of down on that fourth line role up until kind of halfway through the Czechia game. Like, when you've got your best player, you need to put him in the best position to lead the team. I don't care if he doesn't have a letter or he's 17, the only 17-year-old or whatever on the team. You need to let him lead the charge. If he's the guy that's every time he was out there, he was creating chances. Like you needed to ride him more and put him in a position to help lead the team. And they didn't, and that really hurt them when they were searching for goals against Sweden. They were struggling against Germany for a bit, and then even against Czechia here. So,
and it's so crazy because I would so not think that would be Canada's problem, because last year we saw in the first few games, Bedard was low down in the lineup, and he shot up to the top of the lineup so fast because they knew this is the guy that's going to carry us. And
yeah,
it's wild that they didn't see the same thing here. Like maybe Celebrini isn't a Bedard type, but I mean he was clearly at least in their top 6 players. Like
yeah.
there's no argument for at least that. So him not being on line 1 or 2 is crazy.
The last thing I want to touch on with Canada before we move on from them, and this is something that I really didn't think about much, like throughout the tournament, but then in that Czechia game, I was just watching. I was like, wow, and it was so they went with Rousseau all the way throughout the tournament. He played every single game for Canada. In that Czechia game, I really believe that both of Czechia's goals could have been saved. Like they weren't an unsavable goal, in my opinion. And Rousseau looked a little bit rattled after the second goal. And I was just watching. I was like they're in zero position to make a goalie change. If Czechia scored 3 or 4 in the first period, Canada was in no position to make a goalie change because they've only played this one guy the entire time. And I think it would have been even worse for them had they have made a goalie change, and now you throw in a goalie who hasn't played in like 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. He's just been a constant backup sitting on the bench, has had no playing time in this tournament. I think that's something that also could have, and thankfully Rousseau, came out lights out throughout the rest of the game. And the third goal, nothing he could do about that. But it was just weird. It was just interesting looking, being like, usually you see Canada, most teams really kind of do a bit of a tandem. So both goalies kind of got a feel for it and whatnot. And then you kind of ride the hot hand in the knockout round. But like Canada really kind of had to just stick with their guy no matter what and roll with him. Because I think, and I could be wrong, making a goalie change could have maybe been huge. Whoever was the backup they brought in could have balled out. But I think when you've had a guy that's just been sitting on the bench for too long and not playing, I don't think that making a goalie change was ever a realistic option for Canada.
Yeah, that's fair. And the only argument I could even see really for it is, the other teams would have had no chance to scout these other goalies, so maybe it kind of throws a bit of a curveball into their offensive plans,
Yeah.
bringing in a new goalie. But at the same time, it goes both ways. Yeah, the goalie hasn't had time to play. He hasn't acclimated to like the game speed at any point over the tournament, let alone just that day. So yeah, it would have been a tough call to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Canada got upset, got sent home early. Always tough for us Canadians fans to watch that, but we move on from that.
You can't win it every year.
Exactly right.
And you know what?
Exactly.
Like we do win. Canada does win it very often. But like if we legitimately won every year, it would feel at least a little hollow, you know? Like
Yeah.
if there was no legitimate competition, it wouldn't be it wouldn't have much meaning in the whole tournament. So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's good to see that other countries are able to produce high quality young hockey players like this in this day and age.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. The other game, Finland and Slovakia. Great kind of back and forth game. Both teams kind of trading goals. Minute and a half left in the game. It's tied up. Finland takes the lead. Didn't rattle Slovakia one bit. They come back out 40 seconds later with about 45 seconds left in the game. They tie it up to send it to overtime. And then pretty quickly into overtime, Finland ends it off a beautiful goal from Lasilla, I think is how you pronounce it. That was a fantastic game. Probably the game I thought was going to be the closest out of all of them. I thought these two teams matched up well with each other, and we got exactly that from them.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I believe that game went first, and then the Canada-Czechia game was next that day. And, neither were massive upsets, but both of them, I would say, were upsets. So seeing Finland win that game and then seeing Czechia win, it was kind of like, what's going on here? Things were looking a little backwards. So that was really fun. But yeah, Finland played a great game. Slovakia did too, but Finland just kept going, and they were able to win it in overtime. And it was great goal too.
Yeah, it was one of those games that could have went either way. I don't think Slovakia's got anything to hang their heads about in this tournament. I thought they did everything they could have. It's just going to be interesting to see them back next year and see what they can do now, because it's going to be a lot of new guys next year on that team. So it'll be interesting to see what guys they've got coming in to kind of take over for that team, and if they can kind of replicate some of the magic that they've had with this team that they've had for the last 2 years.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they match up against some of the other kind of middle teams in the pack come the next few years.
Yeah. And then the last game of the first round of the knockout round could have been the upset of the century.
I was so
Sweden,
excited. I thought it was going to happen. I believed.
Yeah. I mean, Sweden gets off to an early 2-0 lead after the first period against Switzerland. Switzerland comes back out, makes it 2-1, almost ties it up to end the second period. And then, they go out there, they keep pushing, they keep grinding, they tie it up in the third to send it to overtime. Good back and forth overtime. Unfortunately, just a bad a bad penalty taken by Switzerland in overtime, and then Axel Sandin Pellikka, beautiful shot, gets the OT winner, and heartbreak for Switzerland. But I mean, to send it to overtime and grind back from down 2-0 after the first period is incredible for them against this juggernaut of a Sweden team that there was this year.
Especially since they were the home team too. Like, that was an impressive comeback, and I thought they were going to win it in regulation. After they scored and tied it up, And then a few minutes later, when Sweden took their too many players, their too many men penalty, I thought they were going to score on that power play. Like I
Yeah,
thought it was happening, but like if you can make people believe, then you are at least pretty in the game. So
yeah,
they did a really good job out there. Nothing to be ashamed of there.
yeah, exactly. Full props to all the teams that went out: Slovakia, Canada, Latvia, Switzerland. I think all teams put up a great showing, given what they came in with for the tournament where they ended up. I don't think any team really. Maybe the only one is Canada who can kind of hang their heads. And I think more so than anything, that's just because of all the pressure on them
The
of
expectations they had.
trying to three-peat um, going into this year. But at the end of the day, like the teams that won deserve to win and can't take anything away from those guys.
Yeah.
Which moves us on into the semifinals. But before the semifinals, the
Yeah.
relegation game. It's no longer the best 2 out of 3. It's just the one and done. We had the two
Right.
bottom seeds, Germany and Norway. Again, another overtime game.
Another overtime game. Like it was crazy watching this many games go to overtime. Like
Yeah,
there was so many tense moments over just a few days of hockey. It was
yeah,
really fun.
yeah. And considering going through the preliminary round, we didn't have any overtime finishes. All we had was the United States beating Czechia in a shootout, and then Finland beating Sweden in a shootout. And now to go in and you had in the first round you had the two overtime games. In the relegation game you had overtime. You were getting a lot of good action here, but at the end of the day, Germany did win this one after a hard fought game. But by both sides, both teams played their hearts out. Germany just edging out. Oh, see, now I did it. Now I did it. Now it's just
Now
in my
you're edging
head.
them.
Now I'm edging them. But now we know that Germany will be sticking around in the World Juniors next year, coming to Ottawa, and then Kazakhstan will now be replacing Norway, who will have to fight for their way back in next year.
Yeah, and that's what maybe it's a little bit of a reach, but but it's extra cool with the juniors next year is in Ottawa, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, so now all the German players are going to get to go to Ottawa next year, and maybe a big time German star like Timmy Stützle will be around in uh
yeah,
in Ottawa looking at the rink during their games. So that might
yeah.
be a cool bit of a prize for winning out that overtime.
Yeah, exactly right. There's a lot of things that can be taken away from it. But we don't need to dive too much into that one because we've got the other big games.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to go with first? Do you want to go with
Let's
the
talk
Sweden
about
one or the
Sweden, Czechia.
Sweden Czechia? Yeah. This one, I mean, not a whole lot to be said. Good back and forth game throughout the first and second period, and then in typical Sweden fashion, they blow it wide open in the third, racking up 3 goals and just kind of stiff arming their way through the last little bit of the game to kind of take it in what looks like a decisive win 5-2, but I still think it was a lot closer than the score dictates.
Yeah, I mean, with 15 minutes left, it was a 2-2 game. Like yeah, that the score really doesn't tell the whole story. All of a sudden, with 14 minutes and 50-ish seconds left, Sweden scores. With 8 minutes left, Sweden scores, and then a minute after that, Sweden scores again. Like
Yeah.
they blew it open at the very end, and that's got to be tough. Do you know if they swapped goalies at any point in that last bit?
I'm not too sure. I can
I
find
can
out.
bring that up.
I don't believe so. I think they
No,
just
it
stuck
was.
with
Oh,
their one guy.
oh, that's Sweden's. That's why it's only 2 goals against. Yep, it was the same
Um,
goalie the whole time.
yeah,
Michael Hrabel.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like overall, still a great showing by Czechia. One of those games where I don't think many people had them pegged to win. I think they still gave Sweden a tougher time than uh, a lot of people and even the team Sweden thought going in.
Yeah, I think they gave him a real good run for their money. Um, these teams, like, you can squeak one out on Canada, but it's hard to win multiple games in a row. It's tough to be the underdog and win consistently. So,
Yeah,
props to them for sticking in it as long as they did.
yeah, for sure. And then the other semifinal game, the U.S. versus Finland. Uh, great, great game by both teams. Finland gets off to a really early 1-0 lead. Halfway through the first period, they doubled down, make it 2-0. So Finland up 2-0 after the first period had to be feeling pretty good. But then in the second period, the U.S. bing bing, in the span of about 4 minutes, they get two to tie it up, and then Cutter Gauthier gets a power play goal with about 3 minutes left, to kind of steal it right at the end there from Finland, and sends U.S. to the gold medal and Finland off to the bronze. But again, another great game by Finland. They really started off the tournament in a bit of a rough spot, and then really picked it up in the second half, and easily could have won this game, I thought.
Yeah, which is crazy considering they were playing the U.S. Like, it's kind of wild that USA versus Finland and Sweden versus Czechia, those games were a lot closer than anyone thought they'd be, I think.
Yeah,
They did both get the outcome that a lot of people thought, but they were close. And yeah, at the end of the day, Finland is fourth in the tournament, and I mean, what's Canada? Fifth? Sixth?
fifth. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, at the end of the day, they still finished higher than Canada, which is a win in itself, regardless of anything. I think to finish ahead of one of the teams that's usually always a gold medal winner, and if not, they're at least winning a silver or a bronze. To finish above them at the end of the day in the tournament, is may not feel as great. If you're not bringing home anything to show for it. But looking back, you got to be like, that's still pretty cool that we were able to do that.
Yeah.
Which then leaves us with only 2 games left: the bronze medal game and the gold medal game. 2 happy teams at the end of the day, 2 sad teams. Funny enough, one of the sad teams is still getting more than one of the happy teams, but that's just the way it goes when you're the only thing your mind is set on is winning gold. But we'll start with the bronze.
Yeah.
The bronze medal game first. I mean, one of the craziest games we've seen in quite a while in the World Juniors, and it's even crazier when you look at the score and you're like, oh, it's 8-5. But so we'll kind of dive more into it, but just kind of give a run through of it. Finland gets off to an early 2-0 lead in the first. Czechia makes it 2-1 near the end of the first. Czechia ends up tying it up about halfway through the second. And then Finland, again, it's that kind of common theme, just bing, bing, bing. In the span of 6 minutes, they rattle off 3 goals to take a big 5-2 lead.
5-2 lead. Like,
Czechia gets crazy. And then Czechia gets a huge shorthanded goal right at the end of the second period to give them a little bit of life. It's like, hey, we're down 5-2 now, going on to the penalty kill. You get a big shorthanded goal to end the period off. Now you're feeling a little bit better though going into the third. You got a little bit of life, and you a little more faith. 5 minutes in, another power play goal for Czechia. And that's also the other thing is, so now it's 5-4, but Czechia had 3 power play goals and 1 short-handed goal.
Yeah.
So all special teams goals for them.
Yeah. No 5-on-5.
And now it's 5-4 with 2 minutes left. Finland's still winning. Czechia sets a World Junior record, scoring 4 goals in 50 seconds in the final 2 minutes to steal the bronze medal away from Finland. 2 of those goals being empty net goals that were only 2 seconds apart, which I think could also, I don't know for sure, but I think that could also be another World Junior record for fastest 2 goals scored by one team.
It looks insane just looking at the stat sheet. 58-52 goal by Rymans Dominic. And then another goal, 58-54 by Andre Beecher. So that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and that last goal by Beecher ended up being the his hat trick goal. He got the short-handed goal at the end of the second period, and he got the first of their 4 goals. That was the eventual goal to tie the game up. I mean, that's got to be heartbreaking for Finland. I mean, you're 2 minutes away from winning the bronze medal, and in the span of in all of it, probably about 3 minutes, it all comes crashing down. All of a sudden, it's like, fuck, 8-5 now. Like
that's got to be so rough on that Finnish goalie.
Yeah, and not even him, but like the players, like all of them, I can't even imagine what was going through their heads after that game. Like, but like for Czechia, I mean, just a hell of a showing, insane resiliency to be down, 5-2, and you score 6 unanswered goals like that, and make a statement there with it being 8-5 in the end. Like, just incredible for Czechia. Like that's a huge win for them. Silver last year, losing against Canada, now bronze this year. Like that's back-to-back years for them of going home with a medal, which is pretty huge. Like to be able to say that in back-to-back years you've knocked off some of the best teams. Like to go through Canada, and then you give Sweden a bit of a run, and then you knock off Finland like that. That's huge for Czechia, and that shows how far they've come over recent years in their development over there for their players.
Yeah, and also, so they lost 5-2 to Sweden in the semifinals. Finland only lost to the US. It was 3-2, and then Czechia beat Finland 8-5. They have an argument that they can beat the US. The argument is there. Like, you guys could only beat them 3-2. We just pounded them 8-5. Like we were just saying, the game was very close until the last 2 minutes. But the argument is definitely there. Like they can beat any team in this tournament.
Well, even looking at the gold medal game, like we'll kind of dive more into it in depth in a sec. But US at one point with about 3 minutes left was up 5-2. Like, we can make the argument that, I mean, if Czechia can, and I know US is a better team, but like with that resiliency of Czechia, there was still hope even watching that being like, Sweden could have rattled off 3 goals, bing, 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 or maybe even 4 and ended up winning that game. Like there's an argument, a very strong you can make, that had Czechia, been up against US, they could have definitely given them a bit of a run. Like they only lost to the US 4-3 in a shootout.
And it wasn't even OT. It was
in the preliminary round. Like they were close to being the one team that beat the US throughout this tournament. So like it's just incredible for Czechia this year. Very excited to see what team they roll in with next year, and they're going to be coming in trying to capitalize on the success and be like, you know what, we just won silver, we won bronze, like it's our time to get the gold. And you know what, with how close and competitive this term is really becoming amongst the top teams, there's nothing stopping them from taking it all next year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. They're going to be one of my favorites next year. Like I think they're going to be at minimum in the top 4. Like I think they're going to be a really strong competitor next year.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then that just leaves us with the big game, the final game of the tournament, the gold medal game. For the most part, a really good back and forth game. U.S. up 1-0 after the first. Kind of couple goals back and forth. Late goal from Sweden in the second makes it a 3-2 U.S. lead after the second. Isaac Howard got both goals for the States there in the second period as well. So going into the third, it's like, all right, 3-2, close game, good back and forth. Early goal in the third from the States. Really kind of made you be like, okay, you know what? I think the U.S. is going to win this one now. It was tough to see Sweden coming back from a 2-goal deficit and then finding a way to get that third or winning it in overtime. And then an awesome goal from Ryan Leonard, just powering his way through to get that kind of icebreaker, to kind of seal the deal there for the U.S. And then an empty netter from their captain, Rutger McGroarty.
Great hockey name.
And then ending
Rutger McGroarty and Chaz Lucius, they got some sweet names coming up in Winnipeg.
Not only that, Winnipeg's first in the league right now, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, 6-2 in the end. Still a closer game than the score dictates. But I think everybody kind of felt like the U.S. was gonna win this game. I think like they were the heavy favorite going into this tournament. They wrapped the tournament up being 7-0. Kind of stapling it with a big 6-2 win in the gold medal game against a Sweden team that always seems to be right there in the end, but just can never get that gold medal, it seems.
Yeah, and it's too bad. You would have loved to see these guys get it when the World Juniors is in Sweden. It would have been really fun. So that's a bit of a bummer, but you know, they put up a great showing nonetheless.
Yeah, and I mean, not too much talking about the game really. Obviously, congrats to the U.S. on winning gold this year. Still a long ways away from catching up to Canada in gold medals, but nonetheless, still a big congratulations to them.
Jonathan Lekkerimäki was the one who won the tournament MVP, correct?
Yes, he was. Which not very often you. No.
Okay.
No. And it's not very often you see that go to a player who was on the losing end.
Do you think if this tournament took place in, let's say, Canada, neither the States or Sweden, do you think he still wins it?
I'm not sure. It's a very interesting one. It's tough to say because he's not even my pick for who should have won.
Who do you think should have?
I think it should have been Cutter Gauthier personally for the Americans. I mean, he ended the tournament leading or tied for the lead in points. He had 12 points in 7 games. He was a +9. You know, yeah, it's tough to say. You got to wonder, right? Is it? Yeah, a big part of me makes you wonder. You know, is it because of the fact it was in Sweden, or because Lekkerimäki? I mean, he was tied for the leading goals with 7 with Isaac Howard. They were both tied with 7 after the gold medal game. So I mean, and you know, I saw a lot of people being like saying that it probably should have been Isaac Howard who won it, but I'm thinking like, if you're giving it to a player on the winning team, the Americans, I think it's got to go to Gauthier. Like he was their their workhorse throughout the whole tournament.
I was gonna say Isaac Howard had a lot of great goals, a lot of great finishes, but Gauthier set like those 10 assists that he has. A lot of those like are not just assists that he gets, but like at least 7 of them are like completely plays that he starts. Like he's the only
Yeah.
reason the entire play comes together. So I definitely would not disagree if Gauthier were to get it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting argument, and a lot of people have been wondering why did Lekaramäki get it. I think he was a huge part of Sweden's success, but my thing is always just, and I view it very similar to the Conn Smythe in the playoffs.
Yeah,
like unless you got say Canada end up losing last year to Czechia, unless you've got what Bedard did in the World Juniors last year, or what Jaguar did with the Ducks that one year. Like,
yeah.
I just feel like it's just a common thing. It should go to the MVP should be a part of the team that won it all, unless you've got that outrageous circumstance of a player,
a guy who is scoring at least 2 points per game. And that's like NHL 2 points per game, which probably translates to closer to 2.5 to 3 points per game in this tournament.
Yeah, like Bedard was over 3 points per game.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's an interesting one.
I don't think Lekaramäki is the wrong pick. I would not complain about it, but there were some people thinking that there were some other guys slightly more deserving. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, like I think if it wasn't to go to Cutter Gauthier, I think Lekaramäki is a fine choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It definitely raises some questions on how they pick or the circumstances. Because again, the big thing is like it was in Sweden, so does that play a role in it? Like I don't know for sure. You kind of got to think that it does a bit, though.
Yeah, you got to kind of guess that, but it's hard to tell. I have no idea who makes these decisions either.
Yeah, I think it's I'm not even sure.
Like, it's got to be some higher ups in the IIHF, not just the Swedish arena staff or anything. So I don't think they had their hands in it too much. But
yeah. One more thing I just wanted to throw in. I would say a big shout out to the crowd in Sweden throughout it all. Like I know a lot of games was a lot of fans of other teams and whatnot, but there was a lot of Sweden fans at every game and having a good time. They had a lot of good chants going. They made the atmosphere there. They made I don't even know the amount of people that were there as fans, but they made it sound 5 times louder. Even in the gold medal game, no fans left. It was still a packed house there, even though Sweden was getting dominated at the end of the game. Still cheering loud and cheering Sweden on as they got their medals and went off the ice. So it's a good look for Sweden there. Their fans, and it really shows that they're deserving of having the World Juniors back sometime within the next couple years.
Absolutely, they did a phenomenal job of hosting, as far as anything I've heard, anything that I've seen. So all indicators are that they did a great job as the hosts. And yeah, if they go back in any time in the next 5 years, I would not be disappointed with that.
Just a little biased, but I'm still a big fan of it either being in Canada or the States, just because I'm not a huge fan of having to get up at 3 a.m. to watch some of these games, and then watching them all the way until 2 p.m. like 12 hours there. It's a lot. Like I prefer the games start at whatever noon our time, and by 10 p.m. here they're done, so you can do it during the day, rather than waking up outrageously early for them. But Sweden is more than deserving of
and that's just selfishly from us over here, because there's probably people watching in Sweden or Finland over there saying the same thing when we get to host it. So
exactly right. Except for them, what would it be like? Actually, I guess it would be kind of the same thing. Some of the games would start for them. It would be like the first games would start at like 6 or 7.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7.
And then by the time like the big games, like the gold medal game, like for us at least, the gold medal game, was happening at like 11 o'clock, 11:30 here. Whereas for them, the gold medal game would be the one taking place at 2:33 in the morning over there.
Yeah.
So maybe yeah, they kind of actually get the short end of the stick with that, because I'd rather still be waking up watching the relegation game and whatnot rather than the gold medal game or anything like that. So
Yeah.
but all in all, great tournament.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it kind of went as expected in terms of who some of the winners were.
Do you have
Yeah.
any big standouts of guys who weren't talked about a ton before the tournament that you think just like raised their draft stock a lot, or really built up some more hype around themselves if they're already drafted?
Yeah, I mean, like going through all the guys at the top and the guys that dominated, like they're all aside from really Celebrini, they're kind of the guys that are and Theo Lindstein with Sweden. Those are kind of the guys that are they're already projected to be high, draft picks, especially Celebrini. So they kind of did what was expected. But the one guy I would say who really just because this is a guy that plays over in Sweden normally, so we don't get to see him as much. But Axel Sandin Pellikka for Detroit, they've got another stud on the back end from Sweden coming to join them in the coming years. He's going to be a phenomenal player for them. Detroit fans should be very excited about getting him over when he does decide to make the jump over to North America.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said him, because he was going to be my guy. He was going to be the one that I was highlighting. He looked really solid all throughout the tournament. He came up clutch when he had to, and it looks like Stevie Y's done it again. Another off the board at the time pick that starting to look like a really nice one now.
Yeah, and there was even a lot of analysts and scouts that really believed that he should have been the first defenseman selected in the draft last year, not a David Reinbacher. A lot of guys even said, after the Bedard, Carlson, Fantilli three kind of go in the top three, there was a lot of GMs and scouts that said, had we had the 4th overall pick, that probably would have been the guy we would have went with.
Really,
which is very interesting.
That's wild.
Yeah, there was a lot of guys that were really high on him, and he's now really starting to show that what has Steel Detroit got, having them fall that far to them. They're just another great move made by Stevie Y that's going to pay off huge for Detroit now in the coming years.
Yeah, and I'm a little selfishly here. I'm hoping that Isaac Howard can make that take that next step sooner rather than later in the next 2 to 3 years. Man, him being a left winger is so good too. If we can have a top 6 of Hagel, Point, Kucherov, and then Howard, Cirelli, Stamkos, that'd be real nice.
Yeah. He's going to be a good player for Tampa. And considering, he was Tampa Bay's only prospect in the tournament, I believe.
Yep.
And he balled out, being the only Tampa guy there. He put on quite a show for Tampa fans. So, which is always good to see, because, in these tournaments, like,
it's fun to watch the guys that your team has taken. Like, it's fun to watch all of them, but to be like, that's like one of our guys. Like, it's like this extra representation when you're already watching your country be represented. So
yeah, exactly right.
It's a good time, and I believe he's our only first round pick in the last 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
Like, God, it's been a bit since we drafted in the first round. So
Just one more thing, because it's popped up for me, and I thought, you know what? Why not? Let's give him more credit. Guess what Czechia's power play percentage was at the end of the tournament? All games taken into consideration.
20%?
Higher.
30?
Higher.
Higher than 30? 36?
Higher.
Bro, 40?
Higher.
50? Jeez.
Yeah, 50%.
50 even.
50% even.
Good God.
Like that's impressive.
Wow.
That is very impressive. Like 50%. Half their power plays are scoring on. That's like, and I know it's in the World Juniors and you play against some couple bad teams and whatnot, but like I don't care. Comparing it up against the States, 36%, Canada 38%, Germany 20%, Slovakia 38% actually. Sweden, okay, yeah, 45. Yeah, but that was also Sweden. Like they had the top power play percentage in the tournament, so that's mighty impressive for them. I'll give them that.
Absolutely.
That's
And
cool.
it's kind of crazy that all of the numbers were that high for the power plays you were just listing. But yeah, 50, that's ludicrous. Half the penalties they scored on. Like that's you can't take penalties against teams like that.
Yeah. That's another big thing that Czechia can be proud of it at the end of the day. They got a lot to be proud of. I think more than anything, I think Czechia went home with their heads held the highest in that tournament.
Yeah, I think they have.
Well, maybe
they have a lot to be excited about.
Yeah. But with that, I think that kind of wraps up everything we had.
Yeah.
For the World Juniors, again, great tournament. Like as always, they do such a good job with this tournament. The only thing is, maybe a little bit better reffing. I think there was a lot of calls that not a lot of people agreed with. There wasn't a lot of consistency. The one thing I didn't like, though, is at the end of the gold medal game, they did a thing of like the refs go up and get like an award. I didn't pay attention to that during the Finland Czechia game, so I'm not sure. But the refs got booed during the gold medal game, and I was thinking like, man, this was like the one game where I thought the reffing was actually for the most like pretty good for the most part. Like there was some calls I didn't. Game? Yeah, there were some calls I didn't fully agree with, but by the definition of the rules, they made the right call and they got the call right every time.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because Sweden lost. I don't know, but I was like, man, you know what? If anything, these refs didn't deserve to get booed today because I thought they did really well, considering how there was quite a few big hits and got a little chippy at the end, and I thought the refs handled it very well. So I wasn't a fan of them getting booed for that one.
Yeah, normally I'm all for booing the refs, but they did a good job, especially in that game. All throughout the tournament, was it fantastic? No, but I think it was fine. I think it was good enough. I don't think it's worth them getting booed at the end. No.
I would say, you know what? Looking back at it, I would say 9 out of 10 calls the refs got right. But it was that one call that they didn't. They really fucked up on. And that blurred everyone's perception of them. So, you kind of take from that what you will. Like, for the most part, they were actually really, really good. But it's just those one calls they messed up on were really big ones that is tough to forget. Those are the ones that stick with you more than anything, right? So
yeah, and it's just so much easier for people to remember. It's so much easier to remember the bad calls a ref makes versus good call ref.
Yeah,
you say good
exactly.
Call ref and you move on. But if they mess it up, you're talking about it for a week. So
yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps up all we got here for the 2024 World Juniors. We look forward to doing this again in a year's time when we're covering the tournament taking place over in Ottawa. And they just announced like 2 days ago, I think it was, that the 2026 World Juniors will be taking place in the Twin Cities, down in Minnesota. So we know the next 2 years are both going to be in North America. And then I'm assuming after that, it'll probably be they'll take a trip back out over way out east over to maybe a Czechia. You know, if they're constantly in the medal games, why not give them a chance to host this tournament, right?
Yeah, as long as they've got, the venue for it and the accommodations, then there's really no reason if they even keep up with what they've been doing. So
yeah,
that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, thank you to everybody for listening to this special World Juniors episode of the Stick 'em Up podcast. As always, you can follow us over on Instagram or Twitter /X at SEU Hockey. Feel free to throw us a follow, say hi, tell us what you want us to talk about, tell us we suck, anything. Like you can do whatever you want on social media, right? But I guess with that, once again, thanks to everybody for listening. And this will be out early in the week, so we will see you guys later this week.